I still remember the sound of the papers hitting the table, sharp, final, like a door slamming shut on everything I thought I could trust. Nursing home admission forms. My son didn't even look me in the eyes when he slid them across. Just a quiet, "Mom, this will be better for you. Better for me." Imagine that. The house was quiet that evening, the only noise the faint ticking of the old mantel clock. The same clock my husband wound every Sunday morning before church. I sat at the table staring at those papers, the smell of ink and cheap copy paper clinging to them, and all I could think was, he promised. He promised I would never end up alone. I turn to you, my sweet ones, my grandchildren, and I need you to hear this. Not for pity, but for truth. Because family, the people you trust most, can carry both love and betrayal in the same heart. And sometimes, you don't see it until the moment the knife slides in. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan creaking with each slow turn, the shadows swinging across the walls. Every memory came rushing back, the sacrifices, the nights I stayed awake with fevers that weren't mine, the meals I skipped so my children wouldn't. And in the quiet, a thought kept burning, was it all invisible to him? The next morning, I called him. "Michael," I said softly. He sighed, already tired of me, though I hadn't even spoken. "Mom, please. Don't start." "Start what?" My voice trembled. "Asking why the boy who once swore he'd never let me be lonely now wants to sign me away to strangers." There was silence on the line. I could hear his children, your cousins, laughing in the background, the clatter of dishes. Life. His life. And I realized then that maybe I wasn't part of it anymore, not the way I once was. When he finally spoke, it was quiet, almost pleading. "I'm doing what's best. You can't be alone all day. The house, it's too big, too empty. And what about my heart, Michael? Do you think it shrinks just because the house does?" I closed my eyes, and in that silence, I drifted backward in time. It was 1978, a humid summer night. Michael was 6, fever burning through him like fire. His little chest rose and fell so fast, I thought he might stop breathing. I remember holding him close, rocking him against my chest while the crickets sang outside the window. He clutched my blouse, whispering, "Don't let go, Mama. Don't let go." And I didn't. For hours, I sat there, sweat soaking my back, praying for dawn, for the fever to break, for one more chance to keep him safe. When morning finally came and his breathing steadied, I kissed his damp hair and whispered the same promise he would later give me, "You'll never be alone. Not while I'm here." But life, it plays tricks. Back in the present, I pressed my palm against the cool kitchen table, grounding myself. The house smelled faintly of lavender polish, I'd cleaned earlier, out of habit, as though preparing for company that no longer came. I looked at the framed photographs on the wall. Michael in his high school graduation robe, his grin wide and nervous. Michael with his arms slung around his father, both squinting into the sun at his first baseball game. Michael holding his own newborn son, awe in his eyes. Where was that boy now? The one who used to run to me after scraped knees, who once said I was the bravest person he knew. I wanted to tell him everything, how I wasn't afraid of being alone in this house, but I was terrified of being forgotten. That's the real death, you see. Not the grave, but the moment your face fades from your children's minds. Later that week, he came over. I had baked a pie, apple, his favorite, with the crust brushed golden. Old habits die hard. When he walked in, the smell filled the room, but he hardly noticed. He carried himself like a man already burdened, eyes darting everywhere but toward me. "Sit," I told him, sliding the pie across. "Eat first, then we'll talk." He poked at it, but didn't take a bite. Finally, he sighed. "Mom, this isn't about forgetting you. It's about making sure you're cared for. These places, they have doctors, nurses, people trained to look after you. And what about love, Michael? My voice cracked. Can they give me that? Can they remember the lullabies I sang when storms shook the windows? Can they know the way your father's laugh sounded when he came home from work? Can they understand who I am, not just what I need? His fork clattered against the plate. You're making me feel guilty. Maybe you should, I said, softer than I intended. We sat there, silence swelling between us. I wanted to reach across, to take his hand, but my pride held me back. He looked so much like his father in that moment, broad shoulders, weary eyes, that my heart ached. After he left, I walked through the house slowly, my fingers brushing along the familiar furniture. The armchair where your grandfather used to read the newspaper. The worn rug that had caught so many little footsteps. The kitchen door frame still marked with pencil lines from when Michael grew taller each year. Ghosts everywhere, but they were mine. My ghosts. My life. And the thought of leaving them behind, it felt like erasing myself. I don't tell you this to turn you against your father. No. He is a good man, a busy man, and life has pulled him in ways I can't always follow. But I need you to see the truth in full color. Because betrayal doesn't always come as a deliberate wound. Sometimes it's wrapped in good intentions, in paperwork labeled care, in voices that say, it's for the best. That night, I sat by the window. The moon hung low, pale and watchful. I could hear the faint hum of crickets, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. And for the first time in many years, I whispered aloud, not to God, not to anyone in particular, but maybe to the boy my son once was. Don't let go, Michael. Don't let go. And I wondered if he even remembered saying those words to me all those years ago, when fever had made him fragile, when love had been the only medicine strong enough to hold him steady. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the curtains, sharp and golden, but it did nothing to warm the cold pit in my chest. I brewed coffee the way I always did, 2 scoops, slow pour, the steam curling upward, and for a moment, the smell filled the kitchen with something close to comfort. But then I saw the folder he had left behind, the edges of those nursing home papers peeking out like a threat that had taken root in my own house. I wanted to tear them to pieces, scatter them in the wind, pretend none of it was real. But I didn't. I sat down and touched the corner of the paper with my fingertip, as if testing fire. And memories came rushing back, memories that burned far worse. It was the winter of '85, the year your grandfather lost his job at the mill. The snow came heavy that season, blanketing everything in silence. Money was tight, but I refused to let Michael see me break. One night, he sat at the table, his cheeks flushed from the cold, and he whispered, "Mama, we gonna be okay?" I leaned close, held his little face in my hands, and told him, as long as we have each other, yes. We'll never be alone in this. It was the same promise, wasn't it? The same words he'd throw back to me years later when he thought I needed comfort. Only now, comfort looked like signatures and strangers in a room I'd never chosen. That afternoon, I called him again. My hand shook dialing the numbers, though I tried to steady it. He answered with a quick, distracted, "Hey, Mom," like a man rushing through his errands. "Michael," I said, "I need you to listen to me, not as your mother, but as a woman who's lived long enough to know when something is wrong." "Mom," his voice already carried warning. "No," I pressed. "I have to say this. You think safety is all I need. You think a clean room and nurses checking my blood pressure is enough. But Michael, safety without love is a cage. I don't want to be safe. I want to be seen. I want to sit in my own chair, in my own kitchen, and know that my life meant something more than being filed away in a building with strangers." I heard him breathe heavy on the other end. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Harder for who?" My throat tightened. "For you?" Or for me, who has to live with it? For a long time, he didn't answer. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint sound of a child's laughter in his house. His daughter, your cousin. My heart swelled and ached at once. Mom, he finally said, I can't be there all the time. I have the kids, the job, the house. You don't understand the pressure. I do understand, I whispered. I lived it. I raised you in less than you have now. And I didn't walk away from you when you needed me. I didn't hand you off to someone else. My voice cracked then, and I hated myself for it, but the truth had carved its way out. He didn't reply. Just said, I'll come by tomorrow, and hung up. That night, I dreamed of your grandfather. He stood at the edge of our old garden, the one he tended with such pride, rows of tomatoes and beans, the smell of earth clinging to him. He looked at me and said, plain as day, don't let them decide for you, Maggie. Not this. Not your ending. I woke with tears on my pillow. The next day, Michael arrived. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, a man stretched thin. I could see the worry in him, even the guilt, though he tried to mask it. Mom, he said, dropping into the chair across from me, I don't want to fight. I'm just trying to do the right thing. I leaned forward, the smell of coffee still between us. Then listen. Really listen. His jaw tightened. Go on. You think of me as fragile. But I've lived through storms you can't imagine. I buried my own parents before I was 20. I held this family together when the mill shut down and the cupboards were nearly empty. I nursed your father through his sickness. I am not fragile, Michael. I am lonely. That's the truth. And loneliness doesn't get fixed by moving me into a room with strangers. It gets fixed by showing up. By remembering I'm still here. He stared at me, his hand gripping the edge of the table. I don't know if I can give you what you want. Then don't promise me I won't be alone, I said, my voice quiet but sharp. Don't make vows you can't keep. The words hung between us, heavy, unforgiving. His eyes flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw that little boy again, the one who once clung to me in the night. But then he looked away, and the man returned. He left not long after. No pie this time, no laughter, no softening. Just the click of the door shutting behind him. I walked through the house again, my feet slow against the wood floors. Every creak echoed louder in the emptiness. I pressed my hand to the wall where Michael's height had once been marked, and my vision blurred. Those pencil lines had faded, but I could still trace them with my fingertips. Proof of growth. Proof of love once so fierce it carved itself into the very bones of this house. Now it felt like proof of distance, proof of promises broken. That evening, I sat outside on the porch. The air was cool, the faint scent of cut grass drifting from a neighbor's yard. Fireflies blinked against the darkening sky. I thought of you all, my grandchildren, and wondered if someday you'll face choices like this. If you'll balance love against convenience, memory against modern logic. I pray you choose differently. Because love is not efficient. Love is not practical. It is messy and demanding and stubborn. But it is the only thing that keeps us from becoming shadows in our own lives. As the night deepened, I whispered again into the quiet, half to the stars, half to myself, don't let go. And for the first time, I wondered, not if Michael remembered saying those words, but if he ever meant them at all. The phone call came 3 days later. Not from Michael, but from a woman's voice I didn't recognize. Mrs. Bennett, she asked, polite and careful. Yes. I answered, gripping the receiver tighter. This is Sharon. I'm the intake coordinator at Fairview Assisted Living. I'm calling to confirm your tour scheduled for Friday. The words hit me like a slap. My mouth went dry. I didn't schedule any tour, I managed. Oh, well, your son did. He said you'd be coming with him. He left the paperwork here last week. Paperwork. Already signed. Already waiting. My hand trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. My voice came out brittle as glass. Thank you, but there must be some mistake. I hung up before she could reply. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the floor as if the linoleum itself had betrayed me. He'd gone behind my back. Not just talk. Not just threats. He had moved forward, with signatures and appointments, as though I were a child to be managed, not a woman who raised him. That evening, when Michael came by, I didn't bake. I didn't make coffee. I sat waiting at the table with that hard folder in front of me. When he walked in, I didn't smile. You've already signed them, I said. His face froze. Then, like a man caught but unwilling to admit guilt, he shook his head. Mom, you weren't supposed to find out like that. Like what? My voice rose, sharp, cutting. Like a criminal finding out the sentence has already been passed. It's not a sentence, he snapped. It's a solution. I can't do this anymore, worrying every day if you're okay, if you've fallen, if something's happened. I have my family to think about too. I stood then, my hands gripping the chair until my knuckles ached. And what am I, Michael? Am I not family? Or do I stop being family once I become inconvenient? He closed his eyes, pressing his fingers to his temples. You're twisting this. No. I'm finally seeing it straight. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the tick of that old mantel clock. I could feel my chest tightening, each breath harder to pull. For a moment, I thought of your grandfather again, how he used to step between us when tempers flared, how his deep voice would smooth the edges. But he wasn't here. Just me and the son who carried both my blood and my heartbreak. I sat back down, suddenly so tired. When your father died, do you know what he whispered to me? Michael looked up, wary. What? He said, take care of him. Don't let him grow up too fast. And I promised him I would. I promised. And now here you are, grown too fast, too hard, deciding my life for me. His mouth opened, then closed. For once, no quick answers. I lowered my voice. I was there for you through every broken bone, every heartbreak, every mistake. I carried you when you couldn't stand. And now, when I stumble a little, your answer is to hand me off to strangers. The anger drained out of me then, leaving only ache. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't wipe them away. I wanted him to see. Michael shifted in his chair, his jaw working. Finally, he whispered, I don't know what else to do. Then ask me, I said. Ask me what I want, instead of deciding what's easier for you. He looked at me, and for a brief flicker, I saw the boy again, the one who once whispered don't let go, Mama. But just as quickly, he turned away, eyes fixed on the floor. That night, after he left, I wandered the house again. The air was thick with summer heat, the kind that clings to your skin. I walked into Michael's old room. The posters were gone, the furniture different, but I could still feel his presence there, the faint memory of toy cars clattering across the floor, of whispered secrets under the covers. I sat on the edge of his old bed, the springs creaking beneath me, and whispered into the empty room, where did you go, my boy? Where did the promise go? And then, like a cruel trick, another memory rose. It was his wedding day. I remember the way he pulled me aside, still in his tuxedo, his bride waiting with her veil, and he said, Mom, no matter what happens, you'll always be with me. You'll never end up alone. His eyes had shone with conviction, so bright it almost hurt to look. I had believed him. Now those words rang hollow, echoing against these empty walls. By the time I returned to my own bed, the house felt heavier than ever. Even the night sounds, the cicadas, the creaking boards, the hum of the fridge, pressed down like weights. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and closed my eyes, but all I saw were papers, black ink signatures, and a door closing me away from everything I'd built. And somewhere deep in the quiet, a thought settled, sharp and terrifying. Maybe I would rather die in this house, among my ghosts, than live one more day in a place chosen for me. The morning was thick with heat, the kind that makes the air feel heavy and sticky, clinging to your skin like a warning. I knew Michael was coming again. He had said he'd return to resolve this, and I wanted to be ready, not with anger, but with truth. When he arrived, I stood on the porch, feeling the rough wood beneath my bare feet. The sunlight glinted off his car as he pulled into the driveway, his movements precise, almost rehearsed. He stepped out, adjusted his tie, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the man before me. Not the boy who once clung to me during storms, not the little hand I held through fevers and heartbreaks, just someone I had loved enough to let him grow, who now looked at me like a problem to manage. "Mom," he said, voice tight. "Michael," I replied, steady, "you need to hear me all the way this time." He hesitated, then followed me into the kitchen. The folder was still there, unopened, but its weight pressed on both of us like a silent witness. "I want to understand," he said quietly, why you're resisting." I thought this would help. I leaned against the counter, eyes fixed on him. "Help? You call removing me from my home, from the life I built, help? You don't see me as a person anymore. You see me as a burden." "I never thought of you as a burden," he whispered. "Then why," I pressed, "did you sign papers without telling me? Why did you think my life could be planned like a checklist? Do you know how that feels? To be written off before you even get a say?" His head dropped, shame and fear battling in his eyes. I didn't know how else to do it. I thought it would be easier. For both of us. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "Do you remember that night you were 6, fever burning through you, and you whispered, 'Don't let go, Mama'? Do you remember?" "Yes," he breathed. "And yet, here you are, letting go." Weeks later, leaving these papers where I'd find them, thinking it's fine to decide my life without asking me first. Tears brimmed in his eyes. He could no longer hide the weight of what he'd done. "Mom, I didn't mean to." "You did mean it, Michael," I said softly, but firmly. "You meant to protect yourself from discomfort, to make it easier for you. That's what betrayal feels like, child. Not violence, not shouting. It's the quiet decision to put your own convenience over love." Silence fell. Heavy, bitter, and yet filled with the possibility of something breaking open, some truth finding its way through the cracks. Finally, he sank into a chair, head in his hands. "I didn't realize. I thought I was doing right. I thought I could handle it all, but I failed." I knelt beside him, my hand on his shoulder. Failing isn't refusing to listen, Michael. It's refusing to hear the heart you once swore to protect. But you can still choose differently. You can still do right by me. But it has to be together. Not for me, not for appearances. Together, as mother and son. His breath hitched. I'm sorry, Mom. I forgot what really matters. And I forgive you, I said. But never again. You promise me, Michael. Promise me you'll never let fear or convenience decide my place in this family. He looked up, eyes glistening. I promise. For the first time in weeks, the weight lifted. I could feel the tension drain from my body. The house no longer seemed so empty, no longer so alien. The smell of old wood and the faint scent of my lavender polish suddenly felt comforting again. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, not about papers, not about deadlines, but about memories. I told him stories of your grandfather, the way he used to whistle while he cooked, the small habits that made him human. He listened, truly listened, as though absorbing each word into his heart. When the sun began to set, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, we stepped onto the porch together. He didn't speak, he just took my hand, and for a moment, I felt that little boy again, holding on tight, afraid of the dark outside. "Mom," he said finally, voice low, "I won't let go." And this time, I believed him. That night, I lay in bed reflecting. Life is strange, it's filled with both love and betrayal, joy and heartbreak. But it's in the moments when we choose to forgive, when we choose to act with courage and honesty, that we find the real meaning of family. I think of you all, my grandchildren, and I want you to understand this: love is not about control, not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about holding someone close even when it's inconvenient. It's about listening, really listening, when their voice trembles or falters. I have lived long enough to know that promises matter, but actions matter more. Michael's promise, once hollow, now carries weight because he chose to face his mistake, to step into the truth. And that, my dear ones, is what redeems us. That is how family survives, not in papers, not in plans, but in hearts that refuse to let go. And so, I continue here, in this house filled with memories, with life I built, with the ghosts of the past whispering lessons in my ears. I am not alone. Not because I am without fear, but because I am surrounded by love, by children who remember and who learn to keep promises that matter. And one day, when you face your own moments of decision, remember, never let convenience replace care. Never let fear outweigh the heart. And never forget the power of presence. Because at the end of it all, presence is what makes us human. Presence is what keeps love alive. And presence is what keeps us from ending up alone.